Hello internet, no up here. The weather is fine and it is time to put this thing through its paces. And through its paces we will put it. Maybe I'll come down there for the rest of this, eh?
We are about to have some muddy good fun.
Full of yucky mud.
In the last video we built this drilling rig. Previously I'd hand drilled, which got me down to the sandstone but just was not getting through the sandstone. So hopefully we can reach our target goal and drill a hole so that we can then fill it with geothermal pipework and extract heat from the ground.
From my original hand level of 4 meters, we have now gone down 6 meters, and I've extracted this tool with the plan of adding another meter or two on so we can continue the drilling. I find that this thing works fine and then it will snag and catch a bit, and what I think it is these pipes are wobbling. So there's a bit of balance in finding the right speed and the right amount of pressure to stop it kind of warbling around the hole. Another way I've been able to solve that, the binding up, because what would happen is that thing would bind up and the motor would continue to spin, either spinning my joiner or making the whole machine kind of flex. I don't want to snap a rod down the hole, so I've adjusted in our variable frequency drive the overload current down to a level where it basically cuts out as soon as it binds in a sort of a non-normal way. So yeah, let's get changing a tool, hey? For now there is going to be an improvement to this, but I'm just holding the rods with this ratchet strap. I'm not concerned at this stage about losing my rods down the hole, because I know that the bottom of the hole is only just kind of to the top of there, so I'm going to be able to grab the rod and pull it out if I need to. But the reason I've retracted it so much is because after you stop drilling, all the mud settles and ends up blocking up the end. But you probably worked it out already. I'm going to need some sort of device to capture this at the bottom so we can do all this at the bottom of there. Now that's about the 10th time I've dropped that, and I wouldn't need that if we had a device at the bottom like we did on the first one to hold that in place. Here we are, we're free.
Let me give you an idea how far down we are at this stage. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. Let the whole drilling continue.
Any time that I work on that rig, I isolate the power. In fact, this was isolated here and it wasn't even turned on. So we can jog this.
By jogging the power slowly, I can make sure that the threads are locking correctly and we're not cross-threading.
This strap is not doing so much now, so that can come out of the way. That entire process is adding another section on, and I'm only adding 1 meter at a time and then removing that meter to then add a 2 meter. So there's quite a lot of work between drilling sections, but there is ways we can make this easier, and we will do that later in the video. But for now, this is working, and we're trying to find all the weaknesses of this machine so we can fix them up as we go along.
This isn't exactly fast. I'd estimate that we're drilling at somewhere between 0.2 of a meter and half a meter an hour. So you can already work out that there's hours of drilling to reach our target depth. Speed would be nice, yes, but more important is consistent drilling. This is down the bottom of my garden, and it could just quietly do its thing. It is so much easier on the body compared to our previous workout by hand, although I really wish we had clays all the way down.
are holding tanks. What I've learned with the holding tanks is they're quite small. If I run this submersible pump at full speed, then we're not getting enough time for the sandy material to settle. Sandy material, I hear you say. I have some over here. This is what we're collecting from the hole. It looks very clay-like, which it isn't. It's just being held together by the polymer, but it is basically sandy material. So I've tried slowing the flow down, and I've also tried adding baffles, but right now this is getting full, so I need to scoop some of this out ready for the next run. And I'm also going to hold the sides up a bit with different things around the garden, like I've done there with the spade, which means I can hold a bit more water in here, and instead of forcing the water to go through this channel at a fairly high rate, we can slow it down by having a kind of entire area, which means hopefully by the time it gets into that pool it's much slower. There is definitely more material in this tank than there is in that tank, so baffles and slowing it down has worked. We're just going to improve the situation so we can get the material up as quick as possible. Take these out for now. The polymer's definitely doing its job.
To avoid poking a hole through the liner, I placed a slab on top. This allows me to scrape the spade against that, but there's only so far we can go with the spade. So time to get our hands in there.
There's still a lot in here. Oh my goodness.
Oddly satisfying, and the water is warm at this stage.
Run. Slack, we are cutting. We've gone down about that far in this short time, so whatever we're doing, it likes it.
All was going so well until...
Okay people, so it's been a couple of weeks for me. For you, no time at all. And well, it's looking a little bit neglected down here. The weeds are poking through. There's a few surfaces that have gone a bit rusty. But basically, I left this with this thing clogged up and not working. Yeah. So I hadn't realised that the pump float had gone down, so that meant I was probably drilling for about 10 minutes without the cuttings being taken away. And what happens down this hole is everything settles to the bottom and creates a couple of feet of sticky muddiness that yeah, doesn't want to move. So I'm now down to 7 meters, and that's all going to come out so that I can clean it off and then reinsert it. I tried using all my methods to pump water and air down this to clear the blockage. I settled in the end on a pressure washer which was dubly clipped to the end, and well, the hose didn't last, so yeah, I've got a replacement for that. But I don't want to take all of these drill rods out in single sections because, as you've probably seen, it's a bit of a process to remove them. So I'm going to try and take 7 meters out all the way up there and possibly just dangling it or balancing it. That's ridiculous. I've got to show you that from a different angle. We got 1 meter, 2 meter, 2 meter, another 2 meter. Well, I consider the 7 meters of how far I've already gone. Bearing in mind how much further I've got to go, let's consider the sponsor of this video. JLCMC has a massive range of mechanical parts on their website.
bearings, couplings, pulleys, fasteners, CNC and 3D printed components. Perfect for DIY builds like this or bigger engineering projects. And here's the good bit. New users get a hefty discount. So head over to JLCMC.com, link is in the top of the description. A huge thank you to JLCMC for sponsoring this video and providing me with hefty strong parts that have been exactly what I need. So on to the drilling, and we'll get down a bit further than that measly 7 meters in the ground, right? 7 meters is nothing, anybody can do that. Right.
Now, given the length of these, I don't want them up there too long, given the neighbours' questions over what on earth that is. So I think instead of lying it down, because I feel like that's going to be hard work to get it back up, I'm going to jet wash it off down here, which should clean it up, which should then be able to send it back down the hole. Okay, well that's been a bit of a ball ache. I've had about 2 meters of silt under here, so every time I put my rods down, there was still another couple of meters poking out. If I pushed it into that, it would block up again, so I used some of the other sections and flushed it out with just straight pipe, which has got us to a point where we're now flowing water nicely, and I'm still going down into basically mud, but I'm just going bit by bit. That might be the bottom. Let's spin it and find out. Oh, in the few weeks of neglect, my steel piece that I CAD up has started to rust. Let's answer the question of why am I doing this? Well, I'm not going to lie, I did think it would be a bit easier, but once I got to a certain point, I was curious with how far the sandstone is under my house. And now I've worked out a solution to get through the sandstone, I'm continuing to go, and it should be possible to get enough energy to heat and cool this building right here. Right, so can't put a wind turbine up here because it's just too annoying for the neighbours. We've got a load of solar panels and we probably will end up with more. But what amazes me is this plot, our plot, this is the corner of our plot, and there is so much energy that can be extracted, mainly from the sun, but under the ground is a huge source of energy, both for us to heat this room and for us to dump heat back into it in the summer. And I want to make use of that. I think that ground source heating and cooling is better than air source, but as you can see, it's way more work. And when you get a company that comes in, they're professionals, they know what they're doing, but there are some significant costs. And now, having messed with this and built this, I understand why it costs so much. They never know whether that hole is going to work. They never know what's down there entirely. They can end up having to do another hole. It is intensive. Even if their rigs allow most of the work to be done, there is still very labour intensive for a couple of people. Whereas you think an air source heat pump can just be bolted to a wall and you don't have to do a lot to access all the air, do you? It's just there. But we can get better efficiency with this, and I think ground source heating and cooling is better for that reason. Ultimately, you want more efficiency and you want heating consistently every year. Because we plan on heating the place every year for a long time, we know that we can get a lot of use out of that, and that efficiency over time will make a difference. So with the hole continuing to drill, we haven't actually talked about what's going down this hole once we've finished with it. So it's roughly 100 to 110 millimeters, which is enough to fit down.
I believe this is 35 millimeters.
So we're going to be putting this giant hula hoop down the hole, as you can see, and on the bottom it has one of these. This has a flow and a return that will go down the hole, back up, and then once we've done that, tube poked down a hole isn't going to do much for me. We need to fill that hole in. Now, It would be a challenge to fill it back in with soil. We could fill sand down it, but we have a bag of basically grout. This stuff is designed to go back down the hole, added with water, and it creates a kind of layer between the two, almost like a thermal compound. So that is the plan. I'll mix that up with some sort of paddle and then pump that back down. But we are still a little while off this. We've got to carry on drilling the rest of the way. And this bag's heavy, so I'm going to put this down. Oh, these have been here since March or April, these few things. Yeah, I thought this thing was going to be done by May. This needs to drop a bit lower now. I can see my water coming out the other end. We are definitely drilling. Now I know that I'm getting good flow, we can actually slow the flow down, which will help us to avoid the muddiness going from our first holding tank into our second holding tank. So I'll just place my body in this dangerous zone. That will significantly slow the flow. It's probably not the best option, and I probably should just go with some sort of valve. But hopefully that will be enough fluid down there to do our job, but it will slow it down, so what we get back down this tube will be less muddy and full of bits. So far, so good.
What I'm really doing here is masking that I don't have large enough holding tanks. If these tanks were much bigger, the volume of water would have a much greater area to move between the two tanks, which would result in a slower velocity so that the cuttings can fall out of suspension. Having said that, we are definitely collecting mud in these tanks.
Well, people of the internet, that doesn't deserve a like and subscribe. I don't know what does. Oh. Okay, I think I'll go that way. Kind of crazy, isn't it? Down that hole is a consistent 11 degrees pretty much all year round. An average steady temperature, and okay, it is slightly seasonal and the closer you get to the ground it changes, but there is an untapped source of energy that is buried beneath all of our feet. Now, some of you might be thinking, what do the neighbours think about this? Well, we've not had that many conversations, surprisingly, apart from my neighbour that's just here, the closest one, shall we say, to it, where every so often we'll have a bit of a chat and he's like, how far are you down now? Love it when you've got neighbours like that. Very fortunate. It doesn't always work out like that for everybody. So far, the hardest part of this whole process is holding this tripod up in my hand. It was sunny just an hour ago, and I kid you not, it's just started thundering over there. This is why projects like this take flipping ages to get done. On a plus note, that 1 metre section is out, we've replaced it with a 2, and that is going down nicely. So I only have 2 more of the 2 metre sections until I'm finished with this. Yeah, I need to cover this stuff up. I'm going to carry on running it though. Chocolatey. Now maybe I'm just hungry, but that does look pretty tasty.
I've experimented with adding weight onto the rig with 2 buckets of muddy water. I genuinely do not know if this speeds this thing up because it runs so slow that it's very difficult to measure it, but I think it's a bit faster like this.
So once this one has gone down, I'll only have 1 2 metre section left and my 1 metre section here, which is kind of crazy. I've got really comfortable with leaving this thing to do its thing and just kind of checking on it every 20 minutes. I've thought about setting up a camera which I can then stream either from my phone or my laptop in the house. It's very exciting. Soon we'll be extracting all of this out, presuming that it carries on as it does, removing all of this gear and working out where to put this in the garden so we can then fill a hole with the pipework. Question I'm asking myself is, what do I do with this rig next. It feels such a waste to go to all this effort and not put it to good use somewhere else. Kind of crazy that this is just some jerry rig thing that I pretty much built with a couple of spanners and a basic 20-year-old MIG welder. The lessons have been learned, but overall she works just fine. I think if I was to do it again, I would use thicker wall steel tubes, which would allow me to apply more pressure to it without it kind of wobbling. And I would also create a device for holding and clamping the bottom of the tubes at the bottom and possibly guiding it as well, which I've started on, but I've just decided I don't need it for this small 13-metre hole. Should we dig multiple holes? Should I try and go somewhere else in the garden down to say 20 metres and then create a cooling and heating loop for the house? That's the question. It's going to be a lot of work if I do that. Lots of different videos, different aspects of the project, and then maybe I'll get professionals in to use that heat loop with a heat pump. Seems kind of crazy, but the question is, why not, hey? Why not? My main reason why not is purely because that part of the garden is in view of multiple neighbours and I just look like a weirdo for having this massive drilling rig over there just kind of doing its thing. And it is going to be slow, so it will be running for days at a time. And I got to factor that in with thinking of the neighbours, hey?
Well, people of the internet, we've done it. We've reached 13 metres down into the ground, through topsoils, clay, gravel, and finally metres of sandstone, all with a rig that I can't exactly say is my proudest creation. Now, 13 metres might not sound like much, but in old money that's 42.65 feet, which sounds way more impressive, right? It just goes to show what's possible with the right tools. Okay, well, with tools. Not just your hands, but using tools. At this point, the rig is really into the swing of things. If I kept adding drilling stems, I honestly think it would keep going. But for this hole at least, 13 metres is as far as we need to go. And just think about what it took to get here. Broken welds, an SDS drill, an air compressor, and lots of stubborn determination. Where there's a will, there's a way. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our sponsor to this video, JLCMC. Link is in the description. Until next time, Battery Man out.